And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Geekwatch, a subsidiary of the monastery, the open bar of the internet. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is my good brother here in the temple, the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadare Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
The Dari Enterprises would like to remind you that every one of our members of R&D and robot development will definitely have a personal development plan in their future, even if we have to redevelop you from the ground up.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
Yes, he just may not like the form he takes. We ascribe to the armored core ideal of putting you in the robot. You may never get out again. Oh wait, I wasn't supposed to say. Fuck! God damn it, legal! Get off my back!
But fortunately, we're not here to talk about the horrific fate that that I'm pretty sure almost every Raven has had to deal with in one form or another. Although it could be worse. You could be in Project Phantasma.
We don't talk about Project Phantasma.
But instead, we're here to talk about wargaming because I don't think we've done a episode proper on anything wargame related.
We probably mentioned obliquely as part of tabletop in general, but not directly about war games.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you count part of the Exodus trilogy regarding the change from Warhammer to BattleTech.
Yeah, that barely counts, and I'd say that was more of a shift. That was more of the shift between IPs. I did remark on the way BattleTech works, but
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah,
it was more about the community leaving and going into the lore of things, because let's keep in mind there's a large segment of the fan base for both that are massive fans but don't play the war game.
yeah, they're massive fans and for everything outside of the war game.
Mm-hmm. In the case of BattleTech, that might be Mech Assault or Mech Warrior, or even the Harebrained game, or even some of the fan projects that have come about, like Living Legends,
Or just the fact that the lore is batshit insane.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you mentioned that because yesterday I'd watched Sven Vanderplank's newest episode regarding the first Succession Wars, and shit has started to hit the fan, and it's only going to get worse.
Did I not just say that it was batshit insane?
Uh,
I feel like there's an echo in here.
for those unaware, there were maybe 20 million dead at the end of the Ameris Civil War. The death count with the first Succession War is so high we can't even count it.
Well, I mean, we could, but it wouldn't really be conducive to do so.
Well, at the start of his Succession War series, Sven showed these towers that had, here's how many people died during the Age of War. Here's how many people died during the Unification War. Here's how many people died during the Ameris Civil War. And here's how many people died during this first Succession War, and it just keeps going up and up and up and up and up.
Yep.
But if anything, I'd say, and as blasphemous as this might be to some people, BattleTech is more grimdark than 40K.
I can hear them ringing in the distance, Monk. It's a good thing we've already battened down the hatches.
Because when you hear about the Inquisition blowing up a planet, you don't get the death count.
I mean, you get an estimate depending on what type of planet they blow up. Like if it's a hive planet, you know it's trillions.
Mm-hmm. Whereas in BattleTech, you get the numbers.
Specificity is key.
And even if the numbers aren't as high, the impact is much greater.
Yes.
Especially once the nukes start coming out. But the point is we haven't specifically done any design thing with wargaming, and the last time I did on anything on the matter was when I had the developers of War Surge on, who are trying to do a universalist wargame, as I've mentioned beforehand, which
Yep.
is certainly a bold strategy.
We'll see how that plays out.
But I've always I remember getting a miniature board game version of Halo right around the Halo 3 days, and it was all right, but I couldn't help but feel like there was more that could be done with this concept. And because of that, when I was brainstorming topics, that's why I ended up thinking of what about doing Halo but in a war game? And I'm aware that there is a miniatures game. I'm not acknowledging that right now. Largely because I haven't seen a full. I've seen minute. I haven't seen. All I've seen is like figures, and the figures are too big um, to be a minis game, in my opinion. Uh, 'Cause, yeah, there's ground command, and I don't even know. I don't even know if that game is even. I don't even know how far along the game, how far along and how well done the game is, because I've seen a few minis here and there, but I haven't heard hide nor hair of it in several years.
Hmm.
And the stuff about it um that's on Board Game Geek is all old as hell. The latest review of it was 7 years ago. Um, the most recent review was 6 years ago. When it comes to forums, the most recent thread was 3 years ago with someone looking for a copy.
Sounds like it might be dead in the water.
It could be. The closest thing I see when it comes to PDFs is for a Risk variant. Um,
We're just going to play this Halo war game using the Risk board game.
yeah, and it's true. There were sets. It it came out in 2016, and apparently it was discontinued after the company closed. But there are some people trying to keep it alive.
Like I said, sounds like it's dead in the water.
Yeah. Now, some other among you might be saying, well, what about Halo Wars? First off, what about Halo Wars? Okay, that's a little bit harsh. I like Ensemble's work, and I don't hate Halo Wars, but an RTS is not exactly the same as a war game.
In fact, you can see this quite easily just by looking at the best RTS Games Workshop ever let Relic make for them, the Dawn of War series.
Mm-hmm.
And you go into that game, you know it's massively different from playing Warhammer 40K.
The closest thing that I've seen to replicating the war game is Battle Sector,
Hmm.
and Battle Sector is very limited in terms of its factions and in terms of its campaign. Trying to do a trying is it possible to do a war game in a video game format? Yes, but it hasn't been done all that often. The main
Except if you're using tabletop emulator.
and that's cheating.
Yep,
In
because you're
ter-
just
in
playing a tabletop.
mm-hmm. uh, it's also the same reason why when it comes I'd consider it just as much cheating to use Mega Mech in this kind of context.
Hmm.
But the big thing is that the only war game leaning RTS that I can think of is Myth, which for one is a topic for another day that I'd like to tackle because Myth is an interesting beast.
Hmm.
But but things like base building, resource gathering, and that sort of macro play where you're developing along tech trees is not really something you can get away with in a war game. Are
Yeah.
there are there ones that do it? Prob Probably, but they're also going to be in the minority because that's not how people are going to play this kind of thing. Because keep in mind, war games were built around simulating historical battles in the earliest days of them.
Hmm.
How earliest you want to go on depends on you. Some people would say the stuff that the war game that H.G. Wells made. Some people say the war games that were being made for Polish officers, and some will say the Strategio, which was made in the late 19th century and used a spinning top instead of dice. Um, I would say for the purposes of this, we're using the war game boom that came around in the 70s. The point where you're replicating like World War One or World War Two or or pike and shot era battles. And the key thing is that these are replicating specific battles. You're not gonna have a war game that's trying to replicate the entirety of World War II, for instance. That'd be outright. Actually, I would say that'd be outright psychotic, but then again, there were those monster board games back then, which were a
Mm.
different form of psychotic. You know the ones because one of them I keep bringing up to make fun of people who complain about complexity.
Yes, I know.
Of course, there's also that Macross game that you and I have attempted to look at and be baffled with some of the decisions in it. Where
Yeah,
individual missiles are tracked on the
yeah,
board.
yeah. And they're tracked in three axes
Mm-hmm.
somehow.
Yeah, I would like to if by some miracle I find a PDF that I could translate by throwing it in DeepL or something like that. Um, I may try and roast it, but um, I haven't been able to find a decent scan, or at least a decent scan where I could copy and paste the text.
Hmm.
But a because of that, a war game is going to be built around a point budget and people building their armies around that point budget and then seeing what happens.
Exactly.
And that is what we're going to be attempting at with this constructing a Halo war game. Now, as far as where this would happen within the timeline, I don't think that's important,
Yeah,
especially since part of the appeal with wargaming is being able to construct alternate scenarios. Um,
exactly.
the both Games Workshop and Catalyst and others kind of build around build around this possibility.
Mhm.
Um, it's just that you're not going to be able to do alternate scenarios in official events, but we don't have that problem. Um,
You should hope we don't. I wouldn't want to be a part of 343 Studios right now.
oh, it'd probably be a it'd probably be a very short job because you've seen the amount of churn that seems to be going on in that studio.
Yep.
Um, that is not. In fact, I would go into detail on that, but all that
Not the
that is
focus
more
of this episode.
that and Nerd Slayer did a very good breakdown of everything that went wrong with Halo Infinite.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's quite telling that they've essentially abandoned the Slipstream engine and are trying to pivot towards Unreal,
Hmm.
which I think which tells me that they're essentially throwing up their hands on that front. But again, another story. Um, and but before we can get to any of that, I think the first thing that would need to be decided is what sort of scale we'd be going with. Not scale of miniatures, but scale of conflict. And there's two. This is a pendulum that can swing one of two ways. On one end, you have a macro style war game. This is the domain of your 40Ks, your Apocalypse 40K or Epic a few years ago, your War Hordes. I'd say is another case of this.
Hmm.
Basically, ones where you have big ass armies with a lot of units.
Yes.
Uh, on the other end of the pendulum is the skirmish scale, where it's bigger than say a tabletop RPG party, but not as but only a handful or a few dozen units at once, and on a much smaller point budget, but with each individual unit having more to offer. If I had to use an example of this in when it comes to things we've talked about previously, I'd say Infinity is a good example of this.
Yeah, I was going to say Modiphius's Infinity is probably the best example.
Corvus Bell's Infinity. Modiphius just handles
Oh,
the RPG.
that's true. My bad.
Uh, I suppose I could also bring up Anima Tactics when it comes to this.
Um, I'm not super familiar with Anima Tactics, so I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, that was very um that one was far more of a skirmish end of things. Um, Relic Knights is also one example. There was the Endless Fantasy project, which um, is definitely has a lot of Final Fantasy vibes, as the name implied. Though it does utilize other character references. Um, I'd also say that the miniatures game that was done um, using Savage Worlds' rule set as a base. I'd say that would also qualify for miniature scale.
Okay. Um, if I could give the envisioning to some video games here, if we're looking at some strategy or tactical video games, most of them that are not large scale real time strategy tend to be about skirmish level. Final Fantasy Tactics is about skirmish size. Just about every Fire Emblem skirmish sized.
hmm And truth be told, I know Fire Emblem has had some RPG takes, though I will argue that Fire Emblem fits better in a skirmish war game than in an RPG.
Yes, absolutely.
Uh, but the reason why we ended up going, for the purposes of this experiment, we are going with skirmish scale rather than war scale. And the big reason was that if we were to do war scale, that the unit variety just would not suffice.
Not to mention the fact that you really only have two, maybe three total factions to consider, unless you push yourself out into the less good Halo games, in which case you have about 5 factions total to consider, not counting the Flood, because the Flood are just swarm units and aren't really a faction.
Mm-hmm. The other reason is there again. There's not enough meat on the bones, and I feel that when I was thinking about what we would want to simulate, uh, my mind immediately went to the most famous mode throughout the series, Big Team Battle. I'm just going.
Yeah.
That's what we need to use as a base. This is Big Team Battle, just slightly scaled up. You know, the area that had the largest maps in all of the games had the most amount of people and was largely the mode to mess around with because, well, they wanted Halo to be more of a party game
Yep.
in terms of its multiplayer. Like the pro stuff, the MLG stuff, all that shit happened by accident.
Hmm.
And I think that's something a lot of people easily end up
Forget.
forgetting.
Yeah.
So I think so. With that in mind, I think the other thing to nail down is when it comes to the factions. Um, and this was one of those things that Zan and I did have some debate over early on.
Mm.
Because I was of the until I saw the light.
Hmm.
I was of the mindset that we needed more than just two factions. However, I quickly realized that having more than two factions was going to create issues where some of the factions would have more units than others.
Not to mention the fact that there would be some massive usage overlap.
Hmm. So the approach that we ended up taking is we are only going with two factions in this. That being UNSC and Covenant.
Yep.
I know some people say, "What about the Flood or the Sentinels?" The Flood is a swarm faction. Swarm factions don't do well in skirmish games.
Not to mention the Flood are fairly ineffectual. The
And
Grave Mind was only threatening in cutscenes.
mhm. uh, and Brian is asking how many models for each faction would be the standard ideal.
Mm,
I feel
I'm
like the
not sure on that.
um, I feel like the pop cap could be 12.
I can see 12. I mean, that gives us enough variation to have, say, a Spartan on the UNSC side and a Hunter on the uh, on the Covenant side, and then a smattering of all the other types of troops.
Yeah. Now, and that's assuming that different campaign modes aren't considered.
Mm-hmm.
Since obviously there wasn't just big team battle. You had Slayer, you had CTF, you had Bomb, you had Infection.
Yeah,
Uh,
Juggernaut.
mm-hmm. uh, and within within each of those um you have certain variations. Oh, and I forgot to mention invasion. I will note that the games that I used as the basis when I was taking notes was the ones that was the hexology, I guess, of Bungie's run.
Wouldn't it be a
Yeah,
quintology?
Quintology. Sorry. So Combat Evolved, Halo 2, 3, ODST, and Reach. And one of the, now part of the part, now when it comes to why I didn't use the Sentinels is because there's only really one unit with the Sentinels.
Yeah. Flying, annoying, stingy laser cannon bastards.
Hmm.
Can
And
you tell that I don't like Sentinels?
pick a number and get in line.
Excuse me? I'm an OG. I've been in line.
Yeah. And as far as why I didn't go with the Prometheans in 4 or use the split Sangheili and Banished in 5 and Infinite, the Sangheili and the Banished alone don't or whatever Covenant successor you want to pick don't have enough units to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, they don't have the variation that's necessary.
Hmm. And the other factor is that as I mentioned when we tackled Halo over the years, the pattern there was a pattern between UNSC and Covenant weapons that was fairly consistent with only a few rare exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
UNSC weapons were hit scan, Covenant
Mm-hmm.
weapons were projectiles.
And we all know the exceptions to those ones, don't we?
Hmm. Uh, the other the other the other affair to consider is is the fact that with the with the Promethean weapons, as I mentioned before, the Promethean first off the Promethean types that we got in 4. We only had 3 types, and each of them bottlenecks a part of the Golden Triangle. And when it comes to when it came to the Promethean weapons, they're as I mentioned before, they're either too useful or not useful or too situational, and there wasn't a niche for them to fill.
Yeah.
Uh, and Brian is asking what's the ideal terrain size and density. Um, I think trying to have a set terrain size would be a table by table basis kind of thing. I mean, I could say 2 feet by 2 feet, but there's way too many variables in that kind of question.
Mm-hmm.
Now that being said, uh, when I ended up making a list of weapons, vehicles, equipment, and units for both sides. Uh, before we even get into that, I would like to kind of work out what the core mechanic would be, and I know it would be tempting to use a pool of d6s a la stuff like Warhammer,
Mm.
but I don't think that would work because the reason for those pool of d6s is because combat is built around squads.
Yeah.
And squads are just any set of units that are at least within 2 inches of each other. that doesn't quite work for us. Um, Anima Tactics had it as a 2d10 approach. Um, essentially, essentially 2d10. You compare the sum to defense, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Uh, and truth be told, I do think that approach has a little bit more weight. Let me consult something, because I know that I kept a, because I'm pretty sure I had. Nope, that's just the
Well,
guidebook.
pork chop, as we said, it's the proper size and terrain is going to be a table by table basis. Some people are going to want to play that whole knockdown, drag out, everybody's close to each other, small fight. Whereas some other people are going to want the longer distances.
That is the reason why I did not
Mm-hmm.
pick um a particular size, especially since consider how all of the multiplayer maps have their own little quirks throughout the games.
Yeah.
And in the same vein, our own project would require a similar degree of quirks.
Yeah.
So because like you're gonna have some that are gonna be snipers paradises. You're gonna have some that are going to be um
Knockdown, drag out in front of each other.
mm-hmm. And some that are going to be right in the middle of things.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, um, try, trying to trying to do them in a unified approach um, wouldn't in trying to have a set map size
Mm-hmm.
that that would be the case. And this is also the reason why I haven't factored in like the size of the minis, because that's more of a manufacturing discussion, not necessarily the kind of discussion that we get into with this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so let me. So I just re-grabbed um, the old rule book for Anima Tactics just so I could um, just so I could refresh my memory.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see. Da, da, da. I'm just going through what the so the approach that they had was not 2d20 but rather d10 would rather d10 and
You did say 2d10 earlier.
yeah, it was a straight d10 in their case originally.
Okay.
uh, the of course they also had a they had an AP system, we wouldn't be doing that. We would just be doing movement and
And action.
action, whether that action is shooting or otherwise.
Shooting, melee, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mostly because I'd want to keep things moving relatively quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see here. Let's see. I think I think the course I think um, the core stats that we can go with would be um, would probably be, obviously the big one is movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I am thinking of putting a X and Y version. Um, the or rather, actually, just a set number of movement can work. The approach I was thinking is you can do double moves, but that's all you're getting. Um, obviously, um, obviously close quarters and shooting attack.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's see, after that would probably be um, armor, which I'd say armor is meant to be straight damage reduction.
Okay. So it's soak.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's because I do think it's appropriate to do health and shield
Okay.
in order to. And when it comes to shield, this is one where I'd put two values. Um, the current value and actually I was gonna do current value and then recharge rate. Um, but I'm thinking the approach that would happen is um, shields do a full recharge at the start of a round, because shields recharge pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the reason for the health and shield dichotomy was you had something to fall back on, but you'd be punished if you took too many mistakes.
Yeah.
Um, he says scale is important, having none as a hindrance, and as for sizes, there are files for 32 millimeter scale and 6 to 10 scale available. Those are factors that are beyond the scope of this, because that's a miniature manufacturing thing, and I don't have a 3D printer. Zan probably doesn't have a 3D printer, and I don't know if you have a 3D printer, Brian, and I'm not going to assume anyone does. Um, and as far as shield recovery, as he says that shield recovery could be an action to recharge, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, your shield didn't cost you anything in the Halo games. Your shield was merely there to get you past some of your mistakes if you made any. Like Monk said, the main thing was your shields would go down if you made too many mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Uh, this was also why melee was so dangerous of an action to take, because shields could even though it could go through all of shield in one shot, um, you're also getting in close, which is why BXR was such a plague.
Yep.
But and as far as he also mentions Malifaux's system as a randomness generator, I don't think that'd be a good idea. Um, that particular system is tailor made for Malifaux. It doesn't and Malifaux is not exactly trying to do a space opera. But
Yeah.
let's see if you let me see if there's an oh let's see health. Let's see, then okay, there's no need for doing resistance, and the action bar is definitely not needed. Uh, I think that I think that I think that covers the base stats. So
Okay.
attacks would hit shield first, then hit health at 0. They're taken out.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, as far as the core die mechanic, um, I'm thinking roll 2d20, keep 1. Or not 2d20, keep 2d roll 2d10, keep 1.
Okay.
So usually keep the highest. Um, I'd say if we want to put some sort of extra effect, that's determined by matches.
Okay.
Uh, Because you know how the age system has the stunt rule.
Hmm.
That's kind of what I'm going with on that front.
Okay, I see where you're going.
It's just that the type of effect that's needed would be determined by the type of match. So
Hmm.
not all matches are created equal. So in this kind of situation, a headshot would be getting double tens.
And that is obviously the best match.
Wait a minute, we need to keep with the time. That's gotcha and go.
No, because you said matches and we're doing matching dice. It doesn't matter if Gotchard is current. That's still a build reference.
And now when it comes to weapon stats, I think obviously the first one is going to be E range.
Hmm.
Uh, if you're under, and the reason why I said E range is to account for the fact that something like a sniper rifle is probably not a good idea in close combat.
Yep.
So it's a case of this is the minimum and maximum range that you can fire this kind of thing. Um, BattleTech has a similar thing when it comes to the different types of missiles and other equipment, where there's an optimal range and in some cases you do want to be at a certain range in order to use something, which is why I went with E range instead of just straight range. Which when you do straight range, you're
It does weird things like making a sniper rifle effective at 0.
yeah, and that's something that should be discouraged.
Yes.
Um, obviously, obviously the second entry is is the attack roll, or at least the attack modifier. Actually, um, um, though actually, yeah, I think we can. I think the first thing would be type. You know, whether it's whether it's close quarters or not.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and should weapons provide a bonus to the roll, or should your choice of weapon just determine damage?
What do you mean?
Inter Like when it comes to the weapon stats, should one of them be a modifier to the bonus you're getting for a close quarters attack or shooting attack?
A bonus to hit, you mean?
Yeah.
Um, I don't feel like any of them should have something like that uh, as part of their basic kit, because I feel like if we're gonna have accuracy modifiers of any type, it'd be on something special, like continuous fire or whatever.
Yeah, and that's something that can be covered elsewhere.
Yeah. Also, Pork Chop is a dirty clanner. He did optimal range is always clan tech, 1 hex away.
He also says weapons augment to hit at optimum range, but the unit wielding should be the baseline. In that being the case, instead of in I'm just gonna the attack mod, I'm skipping that and going straight to the next stat would be damage.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that there should be an excess bonus, i.e., um, and that, actually given that, I just realized that there's one more stat that we need to add, and that is evasion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be your primary defense.
Yeah. Because the best defense in Halo is always just not getting hit.
Mm-hmm. And so the difference between the attack and evasion, I think, should be applied as extra damage.
Okay. But at what ratio is the question? Because I feel like a straight 1-to-1 might be a little spiky.
Half.
Half the difference, rounded up.
Yep.
Okay, I can take that. Because I can see someone, for example, rolling 2d10, getting a 10, and some unit's evasion being 4. Mm-hmm. And so that's a difference of 6. At a rate of 1-to-1, 6 damage could possibly be a lot, especially if you're hitting something like a normal Marine on the UNSC.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, and I do think that range weapons have an ammo count. Not in the same way that the games have it, but just a certain number of times before you have to spend an action to reload.
How would that work though? Like, in all honesty, I think it would be better for there to be basically an unlimited magazine, but you have specific modifiers that each weapon has that causes them to act in different ways. Like, for example, the plasma pistol, you charge that thing up and fire it, but then it's on overheat for like a turn.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you spend an entire round shooting your plasma rifle, it goes on overheat for a turn. You do suppressive fire or something very rapid with it instead of just taking a normal shot with it. It's going to go into overheat.
I'm thinking that for hit scan weapons,
Mm-hmm.
um, the approach I'm going with is that um, you would you have essentially either ammo or heat. For hit scan weapons, you have ammo, but that is mainly used for weapon specific effects.
Okay. And then you have to spend an action reloading to be able to use them
Mm-hmm.
again. Of course, for the rocket launcher, that's going to be a reload every 2 shots, regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not hit scan, but it does do the boom boom.
Must use weapon specific effect. Must use a reload action. So I wrote weapon specific effect. Must use a reload action in order to use the weapon again after using this effect.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so let's see. I think that covers everything for the base stats when it comes to each of the weapons. Um, I do recall that one of the things we decided to differentiate UNSC and Covenant is that UNSC has a bit more, doesn't have as much unit variety, but each unit is a bit more multi-role.
Yeah, because you've got, like, even looking at Spartans. Well, Spartans are meant to be a super a super heavy operative. They're still multi-role. They do a lot of different things.
Um,
The
but
ones that are the most specialized are the ODST,
mhm.
and even then, they're only sort of specialized.
So when it comes to the when it comes to the um, base stats, let's use the marine. Um,
Okay.
what would you say should be a baseline for what should be a baseline for just the standard UNSC Marines?
Mm,
Is
if we look at how enemies pan out in the Halo games,
mm-hmm.
most normal Marines can take on grunts and jackals without issue until there are too many to take on. It's really brutes, elites, and hunters that give normal Marines any huge amount of trouble on their own.
Yeah, I'm thinking when it comes to health. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say I feel like the baseline that should be used is 10.
Okay.
So um, it's Marines don't get shields,
Mm-hmm.
and as far as movement, if we're using inches, how many inches would you have them go? 6.
Mm, I can see them moving 6. Yeah.
Uh, let's see. And as far as evasion is meant to be the defense stat. So let me load up any dice. So well, obviously, I feel that for evasion, if we're using 2d10 and keep highest, I'm trying to remember how to have it so that it's written in as keep highest for Actually, you know what? I just realized I have one game where that calculation is done, that percentage is done for me. That being the roll and keep system,
Mm-hmm.
because somebody did a probability chart a long time ago. So we're looking at 2K1, and so 2K1, if the target number is 5, the probability is 84%. If it's 10, it's 19%. If it's 15, it's 12%. If it's 20, it's 2%. If it's 25, it's 1%, and everything above that is less than 1%.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so given that, I do think a decent baseline defense would be um, give would you say would you say like 8 would be a decent baseline defense then?
Well, if we're rolling 2d10 keeping high, uh, 8 would be rather strong, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think in that case it should be it'd probably be better off having a evasion of 5.
Okay, that's a pretty average evasion.
Um, as far as close quarters and shooting attack, as far as the modifiers for that, I'm thinking um, plus 1 on shooting and plus 0. Actually, just plus 1 on both.
Okay.
Uh, see, and as far as armor, maybe 2.
Yeah, they tend to wear normal military flat gear, so I can see that.
Um, and you remember how I said that um, that the that that Warhammer 40K squads have that whole thing where um they're rolling, where squads are built on the 2-inch gap.
Mm-hmm.
The approach I'm thinking is that if there's a Marine within 2 inches of you, um, you can roll you can when you make a shooting attack, you use the sum of both dice.
Okay.
Uh, basically, they're going to be better in groups.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was thinking either they keep both dice or they get a plus 1 as long as for each Marine that's within 2 inches of them.
Mm-hmm.
Which do you think would be a better option?
Um. Hmm. I actually think the latter is the better option there. Gives the person a reason to keep their Marines grouped up, an incentive. Which, of course, also makes it more dangerous for those Marines because grouping up like that means you're susceptible to AoEs.
Mm-hmm. Uh, I'm putting it that this only works on shooting attacks.
Okay, yeah.
Let's see so that's our baseline. Um, and
Oops, get in the fucking VC.
Jeez, it's usually Doku we have to do that.
Coops is talking in chat and doesn't get the VC. What the hell's with that, bro?
Yeah, I'm not skewing the damage with this. I'm skewing that they're gonna hit more easily with the more there are.
Yeah.
Um.
Concentrated fire.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, being within close proximity of each other makes them susceptible to, well, I'm going to throw a nade in the middle of y'all.
Um. I'd say now the reason I put in UNSC Commander in the list that I sent you earlier before we went live is I felt that would.
Ladies love grinding treads.
Yep. Yeah, that is meant to fill in the role of your cigar chomping frontline commander, i.e., this is Sergeant Johnson in all but name. Um, I'd say the base stats of Marine wouldn't change too much. Um, but I would say that they do get the squad tactics passive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as far as what else, um, I'm thinking that they can spend their action that any marine that they're within 2 inches of, they get to use the sum of both dice on attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So give so so you have a pretty clear setup with how they're supposed to work. A bunch of Marines being supported by a commander.
Mm-hmm. Like a real army.
Mm-hmm. And as far
I also don't see how just getting done playing Sonic Battle R is preventing you from getting in the voice chat. Get in here, Coops. I will cajole you.
I have I I wrote I wrote the commander's second passage as I know what the ladies like.
That is perfect.
Oh.
I've even got Pork Chop helping me cajole Coops. My chaos is complete. Or is it?
Oh. So passive, I know what the lady is like. Marines within 2 inches of this unit use the sum of both dice when making shooting attacks.
Hell
And
yeah.
that brings us to ODST. Arguably the most specialized of all the units because they are equivalent. They are equivalent to behind enemy lines fighters and paratroopers.
This is why I think they need to have a deep strike equivalent as an active. But they can't be deployed immediately, so just like any I'm going to strike this anywhere on the map units in a war game, they have to be held in reserve for a few turns. And like, by the way, I'm deep striking them right here.
So
Wouldn't that just be called an ODST though, or an OD, an orbital drop?
yeah. So I'd in the ODST game he didn't have a shield. He didn't have shields, but he did have stamina,
Mm-hmm.
which ended up acting like a shield because um, ODST was a victim of corporate politics at the time, since the mines. It was supposed to be just an expansion, but then certain higher ups said, "You've got an expansion as long as other games, Modern Warfare. Why not just release it as a standalone?" And hey there, Coops, I see. welcome to the party.
Wish granted.
Yay! My chaos does work.
Yep.
Woo!
Ladies and gentlemen, bullying works. I do think the ODST should get a limited shield. I'm thinking maybe 5.
I think 5 could work.
Health is still 10.
Mm-hmm.
I'd actually
They're
say
no more healthy than any other Marine.
yeah. I do think that they should have 7 inches instead of 6 for movement.
I was thinking we were going to be going in slightly more even increments. 7 inches is kind of wonky. I think it should be 8.
Yep, 8 I can go with 8 inches.
Yeah.
Let's see. As far as evasion, should that still be 5, or do you think that should be higher?
The ODST in the games and in the books didn't have any greater amount of ability to not get shot from what I saw. That was mostly dependent on you as the player controlling them. But even though they're traveling slightly faster than normal Marines, they were not like as fast as Spartans. So if they do have more evasion, I think it would be conditional. Maybe some sort of something with their passive.
Yeah, I could go with that. Close quarters attack, I'm thinking is +1. Shooting attack, I'm thinking is still +1.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as passives, I think the first one is drop pod. Basically,
Orbital drop.
Yep.
That's in their name, Monk. It should be called orbital drop.
Yep. The approach that I'm thinking is they are not deployed at the start, but can be deployed at anywhere on the map after. I'd say 1 full round.
Okay. Now, I think it's important to make this particular unit option actually optional. So at the beginning of the game, you choose whether they're going to orbital drop or whether they're going to deploy normally with the rest of your troops. I think that should be a choice.
Yep.
Now, most people are still probably going to choose to orbital drop them because they have a plan to do some sort of hammer and anvil bullshit or whatever. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Field 6 ODST, drop in 6 more. Why are they all ODST? Because they're going to kick your ass. What?
Why does this sound like the Krieg strategy?
No, Monk. A Krieg strategy would just be throwing 12 Marines into the grinder and leaving it at that.
No, it'd be you turn around and then there's 12 Scorpions.
Somehow. How did you get 12 Scorpions fielded?
Tactical genius.
Porkchop says, field 1 Spartan. Drop 11 ODST.
Yeah, optional passive orbital drop. ODST are not deployed at the beginning of the skirmish, but are deployed at any point on the field after one full turn. I am thinking of the other passive. I'm thinking of going with is they do get is that the whole they do get the whole sum of both dice effect so long as they are not within a enemy's line of sight.
So flanking, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
That works, I think. Line of sight in these games is weird.
Yep. Let's see. Shooting attacks use.
How would you use the ODST coops?
Well, it's been a while since I last played Halo, so all this new stuff and everything, I'm gonna have to get a bit of a refresher on. Not gonna lie.
ODST stands for Orbital Drop Shock Troopers. They come in drop pods deep behind enemy lines and are meant as special operations kind of soldiers.
Think Delta Team or the Green Berets, except they drop from Halo flights. High altitude, low orbit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's ODST was the quote-unquote expansion / side game to Halo 3. I mean, the name of the game was Halo 3 ODST.
Well, to be fair, the last game I played before I dropped out of it was Halo Reach,
which was the last game Bungie made in the Halo series. So you're lucky.
Yep.
Let's see. The passives that I have are Orbital Drop, which is optional.
Mm-hmm.
ODST are not deployed at the beginning of the skirmish, but are deployed at any point on the field after one full turn.
Mm-hmm.
Passive Flanking. Shooting attacks use the sum of both dice so long as the unit is outside of line of sight.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
Yep. Yeah. I was thinking of giving them another passage where they automatically get one use of camouflage, but nah, that might be a bit much. Besides, we haven't gotten to equipment yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, last is the Spartans. We're not going to be finagling about whether there's going to be a difference between Spartan 2, 3, or 4. Because the differences between them aren't ones that would really play a factor at this scale.
Yeah, the differences between them are, well, the differences between them is that there's only one Spartan left.
But this is where things get interesting as far as I do think that they should have 10 shield and 10 and at least 10 health.
I'm thinking they should have more than 10 health. They are genetically modified to be super soldiers, Monk.
15.
Yeah.
It's,
10 shield makes perfect sense. And then
um,
the Mjolnir armor is going to give them higher armor.
what were you thinking for movement? 10 inches?
I think 10 inches makes sense considering how fast those fuckers can travel on foot.
Yeah. Evasion 10?
Meaning you'd have to hit a 10 to hit them?
It's been 5s so far. Should it be should it be at a higher amount?
Well, I mean, the evasion... Yes, Spartans, as demonstrated in the books and anything else outside of what you are controlling, have been fucking war machines.
It does make me wonder what would happen if you put up a Spartan against Marathon Security Officer.
We should never ask Bungie that question. Let's just not ask them that question.
Brian is saying 7 because he's a big target.
I was thinking more 8.
Yeah.
Just because he might be a big target, but he's also a very, very flighty target. Remember that these guys run really fucking fast.
So we've had +1 for close quarters and shooting. Up until this point, what should CQ and shootings modifiers be for a Spartan? For whatever reason, I'm thinking 4. I'm thinking 4 and 3.
I was gonna say CQ should be higher than shooting, just because that fucking bash, dude. That fucking bash. If
Brian
you do it,
Brian is saying 5 and 5.
I mean, if we want to make him a big guy like that, I think whatever the numbers are, CQ should be 1 point higher than shooting because that bash literally knocks things into the air. Like, you can bash a fucking scorpion. Spartans are like, their CQ is just fucking brutal.
So I'm thinking 4 and 3.
4 and 3 I think works.
Yeah, that sounds accurate.
And up until this point, the armor rating has been 2. What do you suppose the armor rating should be for Spartans? Are you thinking
Mjolnir armor has like a. Have you seen how many hits after shields fall for you to die? Not counting the games that didn't have a health bar because for some reason Bungie was being stupid.
Yeah, we get it. You're still salty about Halo 2. We all are.
No, I'm salty about Halo 2 for a different reason. Why did you remove my dual needler troll tricks? Why? Dual needlers was the best. You could super condense by holding down the triggers for literally 3/4 of a second, and then you could run away and while you're giggling like a mad gremlin because everybody's exploding and like, the fuck, man? And I'm like, dual needlers, fuck you. No. I'm not a gremlin. What are you talking about?
But
Come on now.
Would you say armor base should be 5?
Mjolnir Mark 6 armor is fucking gigantic. That shit's armor plating that would normally belong on a fucking warthog, Monk. You seen how thick the armor plates are?
Yeah.
They're fucking huge.
So I'd say an armor rating of 5 would certainly fit compared to the 2s that everybody else has.
This guy's name is Halo. He kills aliens and doesn't afraid of anything.
As far as passives, I think one of the easy ones that I could go with is that any turret type weapon they can carry on their own.
I can accept that because that was a fun thing to do, to rip the fucking Gatling gun off of the emplacement and go with it. The only sad part was it then had finite ammo in the end. It's like, was that emplacement just feeding it infinite ammo? Is that what this was? But that emplacement was a pole like 2 inches thick. How could it be feeding all that ammo? Gameplay logic. Attention duelists.
So I put it at passive, man portable. You can carry heavy weapons without an emplacement, and what would count as heavy weapons would be, say, the weapons that you'd find on the back of a warthog.
Yes. Let me rip the rocket launcher off of the back of a warthog.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck you!
Let's see. As far as any other passives, I can't think of any.
I would make a joke, but it's not a very good one, so I won't.
Because even though Spartans are meant to be multi-role capable, being the heavy is the bigger part of it.
They're multi-role capable, but they're also meant to just be the fucking the shit kicker.
So
they take a licking and keep on ticking, and then they stomp your shit in.
Mm-hmm.
Except on Legendary, all skulls on.
And actually, I was thinking, the approach that I'm thinking when it comes to weapons is that you either have light, heavy, and super heavy. Super heavy are the ones that are meant to stay put, is what I'm thinking. Heavy weapons would just be two-handers.
Rocket launchers, sniper rifles.
So, because of that, when it comes to weapon stats, I'm also going to put in weight class. Since the only difference between light and heavy is that light weapons you can dual wield.
Your pistols and SMGs.
Mm-hmm. Everything else you get, because I do want to keep to the idea of only having 2 weapon slots.
Mm-hmm.
Since I think it'll be more fun that way, and I'm not having it that your choice of weapon increases your point total, because that's getting a little bit into the weeds, and I don't think that'd be as fun. Some might say it's a bit more balanced, but I don't mind balance, but sometimes I want stupid things.
Sometimes it's good to eschew a little balance for a lot more fun.
Mm-hmm.
As a wise man that I watch on a pretty regular basis says, if the gameplay is good, nothing else matters.
Correct.
And he's right.
Yep. So, I think when it comes to Covenant units, these ones would have more passives. And first one that we start with is the Grunt.
Lowest amount of HP, lowest amount of armor, no shields.
Yep.
They are called grunts for a reason. They're the weakest fucking enemy in the game.
So no shields.
Mm-hmm.
3 health.
I think 3 HP's fine, and I think they only have 1 armor.
Okay.
Maybe not even 1. But I'm going to give them a little bit of soak, just to be nice.
I'd say movement should be 4. They're
yes.
Small guys. They're not going to cover much ground.
They're small guys, and even when they're panicking, you can catch up to them super easy.
Evasion. Should it be 5 or should it be 3?
It should be 3.
Evasion 3. No bonuses to close quarters attack, and no bonuses to shooting attack. 1 armor. As far as the passive, I'm thinking of going with There's a few things. One, their methane-based life support. So the approach I'm thinking of going with is if they end up taking a back attack that rolls an 8 or more, they're out.
Mm-hmm.
Since their natural environment has a methane-based atmosphere, so they need life support in order to, well, breathe in any other biome.
Mm-hmm. Porkchop has a good point with the passive he suggested. With what we've designed so far in the grunts, nobody's ever going to pick that unit unless you give them a reason to, an incentive.
Yeah,
and he's suggesting a way to make grunts into.
Actually, I'm thinking that if it's if someone targeting them rolls a match, that's the instant KO instead of 8 or more.
Okay. That works. But the big thing here is that the incentive for having grunts is you can have a lot of them. And I think buy one get one isn't actually enough. I think it should be called 3 of a kind. And I think grunts can be taken as a trio for every one pop cap.
Though I am thinking of one other passives to give them. Plasma Suicide.
Plasma Suicide is a good one, yeah. And it's the demon would mean that grunts get -1 against Spartan's Porkchop. Don't you see how fucking scared they get of Chief so easily? All you gotta do is pop one and the rest start running.
Mm-hmm. And
unless there are jackals or others that are still there. Yeah, I think grunts should come as a trio, because that's in my eyes that's near the same amount of HP as one Marine. 9, 10. Grunts aren't going to be as practiced as a Marine is, which is why they don't get any bonuses to CQ or weapons, or ranged. And they're not, and that's why their evasion is so low. But there's a lot of them, and a lot of them numbers can get dangerous. Just look at the Flood and how annoying they get when there's so many of them on the fucking screen that your shotgun does not make the screen any less floody.
I was going to call it Three's a Crowd, but no, I'm going to call it Grunt Birthday Party.
Porkchop suggested, it's the demon. Grunt gets a free move if a Spartan kills another grunt within 3 inches of them.
No.
Nah.
Not with the crowd tactics. So, next is the Jackal.
Okay, so we're getting up to more normal things.
Mm-hmm.
Though I would still say a Jackal is a... I'm saying that they're probably going to be a 7 HP because they're not they're more robust than grunts for sure.
They
But they're
do
not.
have personal energy shields.
No, they don't. They have a shield on their arm.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do have. It's not going to be as beefy as the kind of shields that elites or brutes would have, but it is something. So I'm thinking they have a shield of 2 because it's just an arm shield.
Yeah.
Movement, should that be 6 or do you think it should be more?
Nah, 6 is about right for jackals.
Evasion.
Jackals don't tend to evade a lot, but when they do a little roll. You've seen the jackals roll.
Yeah.
I think it should be an evasion of 4.
All right. Let's see, close quarters attack.
Like nothing. They don't do anything close quarters in the games.
Let's see, shooting attack. I'm thinking that should be maybe 2.
2, yeah, because they're usually snipers.
Unfortunately. Armor.
They aren't very armored in the game.
2.
I think so.
Let's see.
Like the most armored, besides the hunters, but they're not really armored. They're just giant fucking worms that are bullet sponges. We'll get there.
The main passive I'm thinking to double down on them being shooters should be marksmen. They increase the minimum and maximum. They increase the max effective. They increase the max effective range of any weapon they have by 2 inches.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, and as far as any other passives, I can't really think of any that'd fit.
Yeah, they don't really do well. They don't really do anything.
Mm-hmm. So, next we're getting into the bullshit with the hunters.
They have no shields, but they have a fuck ton of HP.
12.
I was. Hunters have more HP than Chief, Monk. I was thinking 20.
I can go with that. No shields, but they're gonna be damn hard to take out because the effective way to take them out in the games was shoot them in the back.
Shoot them in the back because that's or anywhere the worms were exposed.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, movement. I don't think they should be moving that much.
No, the only time they moved fast was when they charged you, which I think is going to be an attack in their unit abilities. But
yeah, I'm thinking 4 inches.
Yeah, otherwise they moved pretty slow, so 4 inches is right.
Evasion 4.
They did not have a lot of Monk. They're the size of a fucking warthog.
2 then.
2. Yes.
All right.
Armor is 5 though. And I would argue they have no shooting, but their CQ is a 3.
Even though they had those infamous fuel rod guns.
Do you want to know who got hit by fuel rod guns, Monk? Noobs.
Fair.
The fuel rod guns are so fucking easy to track and so slow moving that you just have to make sure you're not in the explosion radius. Mm-hmm. In other words, this is the same thing every healer says to everyone in Final Fantasy XIV ever. Don't stand in the fire!
So, let's see. One passive should be armor plating. I'd say if an attack rolls a natural 9 or 10, it ignores armor. If an attack against them gets that.
So if you roll a 9 or 10, you ignore their armor?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're hitting between the gaps to the worms?
Yeah.
Sure. I think that's a good one. But another skill of theirs has to be charge. Which is they can move in a straight line for, I would say, double their movement. And, well, if they hit something, they won't like it.
Let's see.
But that's I would say that's if they do that in one round, then the next round they lose their move action. They'll still have the action to shoot and or bash anything near them, but they won't be able to move because they're tired. In fact, that was the way that you were kind of meant to get behind hunters, especially the infamous 2-hunter fight in Combat Evolved.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to lure them to run past you, and then you'd shoot them in the back a bunch.
They're the equivalent of pinkies.
Yes. Except I would actually argue that these are better designed than pinkies were back in the day.
Well, let me clarify. Let me be a bit more clear. They're akin to 2016 and Eternal pinkies, not OG pinkies.
Yes. Yes.
Because it's the wearable strategy. They're gonna be charging at you. You're supposed to duck around them and shoot them in the back.
Yes. I remember that I would always as soon as they got past me, I'd turn around and BXR them.
Mm-hmm.
Man, hunters would bleed to death real easy that way.
So, note for charge, as an action, move up to 8 inches in one direction and make a close quarters attack. This attack uses the sum of both dice.
Mm-hmm. Makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. Then we have brutes.
Brutes are interesting. Because they're not really... Brutes have a lot of HP. And they definitely seem like they're more close quarters oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, they're the ones with the hammers. Hammer down? No, that's Reinhardt. Brutes are just really weird to plan for here. I think they should have 12 HP. Because they're built better than Marines, but still not up to Spartan standards.
Mm-hmm. What about shields?
Did brutes have energy shields? I can't remember. I don't remember. Fuck. I thought shields were only on the elites, but I might be wrong.
No. No, they did not.
Okay, so
They just had a lot of armor. So I think that they should have a healthy amount of armor.
yeah, I was thinking of a 5.
Yeah,
Because their armor was comparable to a Mjolnir armor, so.
Mm-hmm. But no shield.
Yep.
Movement. I'm thinking 4. They're not very fast.
They were faster than grunts, though. They were along the same speed as jackals, so I would give them a 6.
All right. Evasion.
Now, see, this is where I can use Porkchop's previous statement of they're big targets, because unlike Chief or any other Spartan, who is a big target, yes, but also designed to have snap reflexes, brutes are just big targets, and they really did like eating my bullets. I'd say evasion of probably 4.
All right. And
It's the elites. It's the elites that are going to be the fucking triple threat here.
yeah, and close quarters
Close quarters is going to be a 4 for sure.
shooting.
They hit. That's like a 1.
Yeah. Their
They
weapons.
were bad at shooting at you, and their weapons are kind of shit.
Their weapons are orc
I fucking
weapons.
I fucking hate the spiker. The spiker is such shit.
Their weapons are certainly powerful, loud, but they're not exactly accurate.
Yeah.
I'd say as far as passives, I'm thinking intimidation. I'm thinking some form of intimidation.
How would that work in our system, though?
Like I was thinking that when they take out an enemy, that enemies within range have use the lower die for further attacks for one round, but no, that's a bit finicky.
Not only is it finicky, it could be really, really unfair.
So I'd say we talked about how their weapons are very orky.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should go with that and have it that their shooting that they use the lower die when it comes to shooting attacks.
They already have a low bonus to ranged in the first place, but and it should only be when using brute weapons.
Yeah, that's a bit specific.
Yeah, it's a bit specific, and again, it's going to be finicky.
I'm think. I am thinking. I do remember them having a pretty good leap, so I'm thinking of giving them something like that.
Okay.
And I know Brian is saying that they wouldn't have the option of using non-brute weapons. I don't like that idea.
Yeah, locking out choice is not something we tend to like. We like player choice. If you want your brute to use a Covenant Carbine, who are we to tell you you're wrong? Maybe some sort of daze mechanic built into their CQ, or as a passive for their CQ. Like if they get a match that hits, it. I don't know how.
I'm writing out Mighty Leap. The approach I have is they can move as an action. They can move up to I'd say 8 inches.
Mm-hmm.
This movement ignores terrain.
Yeah, That sounds right. But I remember that one of the big issues with brutes, especially in legendary, was how many of them had gravity hammers.
Yeah, so
And gravity hammers were annoying as shit. But I was thinking that instead of making it specific to a gravity hammer equipped brute, you just kind of bake it into brutes that they have a way of. I don't know what daze exactly would do here. Whether it would lower your movement or lower unit movement or lower unit bonuses for a turn.
uh, I'm think I'm thinking that the that actually the approach I'm thinking is that um I think we can just stick with Mighty Leap, and that's all we'd really need.
Okay.
Uh, because anything beyond that is creating more problems than it's solving.
Okay. And then we get to the elites.
Yep.
So elites, I'm thinking, have flipped scores compared to Spartans. 10 HP, 15 shields. Because it was said that the shields on elites were better than Spartans in universe. And so now this is separation of gameplay and lore. So
Yeah. So as far as movement, would you have it at 6?
yeah, elites weren't faster than Spartans, at least not in travel.
What about evasion?
I think they're going to be more evasive than a Spartan at a 9. And that's because they were really good at flanking in the games, even the ones that didn't have stealth, the optic camouflage. Like, they were just really good at getting around you.
Mm-hmm.
But I also definitely think that they will have a lesser CQ than a Spartan.
So let's see. For Spartan, we had CQC at 4.
Mm-hmm. And elites don't hit nearly as hard as brutes either. Like, elites melee was the energy sword, and it was the energy sword doing all the fucking work there. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking it should have a CQ of like 2.
And shooting?
4. Those guys were fucking crack shots.
Right. And armor?
So this is the part where I'm pretty sure their armor is less than the brutes, but better than anyone else in the Covenant.
Let's see. Well, I think you gave the hunters and brutes have an armor of 5.
Yeah, so I think this would be like a 3 or a 4, whichever you want to go with.
Let's go with 4.
Okay.
As far as passives, I'm thinking elites would have a similar thing to the UNSC commander.
Mm-hmm. But specifically with grunts,
um,
since the elites were always the one bullying the grunts.
yeah, and as far as what to call it, work.
Wart.
And as far I know Brian is saying elites using camo, but I'd rather have active camo as a a power up of its own instead of something specific.
Yeah. I know
So
technically all elite armors are equipped with optic camo as per Halo 2, but
so I'm thinking grunts within 2 inches of this unit use the sum of both dice when making shooting attacks.
yep.
Um, and because it's focused on grunts, I'm thinking of having it as 4 inches instead of 2.
Um, I don't know. That seems a little excessive.
So stick to 2.
Like 3 inches, maybe. Take the happy medium.
All right. Uh, just to just to reward the fact that
An elite is sticking around some grunts
mm-hmm,
instead of going off and doing its own thing and saying, "Screw you guys, you can die here."
yeah. Um, so let's see that covers the units.
Mm-hmm.
So I can get rid of this little thing I put in for base stats. As far when it comes to cost, the approach I'm thinking of going with is an individual unit is um is 1 slot and vehicles are 2 slots.
Okay.
And
Going to be honest though, Monk, looking at the rest of the list that we have here, I don't think we have enough time tonight to finish this.
no, this is something I'll probably I'll probably I think the furthest that we'll I think the I think we I think we can handle the vehicles and that'll be it, and we'll return to this at a future time,
Okay.
or something on the side.
Okay. Because it is getting rather late.
Yeah. Um,
It's late.
and when it comes to vehicles, the approach I'm thinking of going with is that they do not have shields, but instead of health, they have hull.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Pork chop. Now I'm looking at an elite with a rocket launcher and gravity hammer partying around with 33 grunts with all sniper rifles.
well, we've already put in a rule of 12, so we don't have to worry about that.
Well, grunts are 3 for 1 though, Monk.
I should say 12 slots. So 1 slot is 3 grunts is equal to 1 slot.
Yes, which is why he said 1 elite, which is 1 slot, and 33 grunts, which is 11 more slots.
Yeah, I forgot. And Brian, we call instead of calling it 3 of a kind, we called it Grunt Birthday Party. Um, but let's see. Hull to replace health. Vehicles do not have shields.
Mm-hmm.
Movement. I think we can keep how movement works. I don't think it'd be apropos to put in acceleration and deceleration rules for vehicles.
Yeah, I don't think we need that.
Evasion. Now you can't really do much evading with vehicles.
Yeah, I don't think we need it.
Um, the only
Armor, though, is going to be a thing.
yeah. So it's close quarters attack. Can't actually no. Know what? I take it back because there is still ramming, so we can keep close quarters attack. And shooting attack is self-explanatory.
Mm-hmm.
And should we keep armor or not?
I mean, remember that a scorpion or a wraith can take 2 rockets before they blow up, Monk.
Fair.
So armor is still definitely a thing with these units.
Yep. So once again, we'll start with the UNSC end of things.
Okay.
So I'm skipping the elephant. I want to take care of that later.
Yeah, the elephant. We had decided that the elephant and the shadow are going to be basically HQ units.
Yep. So first we have is the scorpion. It is a tank. It does what tanks do.
Once again, the ladies love grounded treads.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? What do you think? 20 for the hull?
Yeah, they're as beefy as hunters are.
Let's see, movement 4 inches, or should it be 6? I'm thinking of giving higher thresholds overall when it comes to vehicles.
Mm-hmm. I can see 6. I can see 6.
6 inches. Close quarters attack. Close quarters attack. I'm putting that as 0.
Mm-hmm.
Shooting attack.
Doesn't it have 2 of them?
Yeah, it has the cannon and it has chain guns.
Yeah.
Because it is a tank.
Yeah. So should we just give it a +2 for that then?
Yeah. It's 2. Armor.
This is where we get to the fun, boys. I'm giving the Scorpion a 10.
Alright.
It's got a whole bunch of beefy armor, yo. Remember that you can sit there and shoot a Scorpion with a fucking AR forever. And that thing will not blow up. I swear to God. Not unless you shoot it in specific places.
I am putting the smoothbore cannon as a tank specific action that has the ammo tag.
Okay.
When it fires, if it's not firing at vehicles, it automatically hits.
We also have to give it an AoE. I'm thinking 5-inch diameter. Because 5 inches would be enough to group up like 4 Marines. Or 4 Spartans. 4 Spartans. 1 little, 2 little, 3 little dead Spartans. Red versus blue, anybody? Slayer.
Automatically hits a non-vehicle target and any targets within 5 inches of it. I may come back to this later when I start hammering out weapons.
Yeah.
But that's the only one I can think of for the Scorpion.
Okay.
So, let's see. Next is the basic Warthog.
I mean, the basic Warthog, do you mean the chain gun Warthog?
Yeah.
Okay. So, like, all of the Warthogs are going to have the same stats except for the gun on them, Monk. Warthogs can be blown up by 1 rocket. I would say they have a hull of 10 then.
Alright. Movement, I think that should be 8 minimum.
Yeah. Warthogs are pretty fast. This is true.
Sometimes that speed is hard to control, but that's a skill issue.
Learn to drift your warthogs today, people.
Close quarters attack I'm putting in as a 1.
Okay.
And shooting attack I'm actually thinking that shooting attack should vary depending on the loadout.
That's why I said they're going to have the same stats except for what their gun is.
Yep. As far as armor,
like I said, they're pretty. They take one rocket and they're down.
Mm-hmm.
They're fairly lightly armored, and you can shoot them and bash them enough that they'll blow up. So, I think 5 armor is good.
All right. So, what their first passive is going to be loadout.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where we this is where we have the 5 options. So what should shooting attack be for the chain gun?
+1. Chain gun's fairly straightforward.
Let's see, for the Gauss cannon.
Like a +3. Because that thing's meant to be fast. I also think that it's... Well, we'll get to that later when we get to the extras about each weapon.
Grenade launcher.
0. It's an AoE... that's an AoE weapon. Noob tube! Noob tube!
Rocket. And this is meant to be the multi-launch kind of rocket.
Could that one lock on? I don't remember. Did that one lock on, Monk?
I don't recall.
Halo Wiki, be my guide. Must find out. Okay. Halo Wiki, Warthog. And the armament variable. Light anti-armor vehicle with the M39 rocket turret. Hold on. Let me check here. No, it does not. It does not have a lock on. Or was no? Hold on. Okay, so which multi-rocket are you talking about? From which game?
Let's see.
You mean the one that looks like 3 rocket launcher tubes, or you mean the one that looks like an actual like missile launcher?
I think it was the one that looked like it could fire like 4 missile volleys.
Hold on, let me just copy an image and throw it in council real quick. That one.
All right, let me see what we've got. Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Okay, so let me look here. It does not have a lock on, so I'm going to say 0.
All right. And yes, but by how I've implied this, this could be taken off and used by a Spartan.
Mhm.
Because as I've said, we try and embrace the ridiculous. And
Indeed. Looks like Coop said to go.
oh, yep, stay frosty, Coops. And the last option is transport, which is you do not get a shooting attack, but you can you can carry up to four units in the within the Warthog.
Okay, so it just takes off the weapon.
It takes off the weapon and gives you more and gives you a fast troop transport.
Mhm.
Now, of course, those four units could still do shooting attacks, just at a disadvantage. But this is essentially turning the Warthog into a mini Rhino, just
Mhm.
without as much armor.
Rhinos. No, I won't do that.
Uh, that's all. That's all the vehicles when it comes to the UNS. Nope, I forgot. The elephant.
Said we were gonna save that for some other time.
Yeah, fair because I should note the idea that we have when it comes to the elephant and the shadow is that when we look at their role, they're effectively IFVs or infantry fighting vehicles, just much bigger than any currently operating IFV. And I will pass it off to you to kind of give the skinny about what an IFV is supposed to be.
Okay, so what an infantry fighting vehicle is essentially a both a troop carrier and mobile weapons platform at the same time. Uh, it can have quite a few people on it. It is used to not only carry those people in, but because it has a weapons platform on it, it is also direct fire support. One of the common IFVs you see these days is actually I don't know if the Bradley does count as an IFV.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, but you probably heard of the Bradley. It has a mounted 50 caliber machine gun. It can carry a bunch of dudes. It's essentially what some people may more commonly recognize as an APC, armored personnel carrier, except it has more weapons.
I'd say it pretty much replaced the what was the APC up to that point.
Yeah, it's a halfway point between an APC and a tank almost. But the elephant is, as an IFV, is kind of a misnomer in ways because of the fact that it carries personnel and can carry smaller vehicles and has an AA gun and some heavy machine guns.
And because of that, we came to the realization that the Shadow and the Elephant can both fill the role of an HQ unit.
Yeah.
And that's how we would treat them. So because of that, it's the one unit that you're getting for free. Both sides are going to have one. That is, if you, I would actually have, I would have it limited to a specific mode,
Hmm.
where the goal is not to take out all the enemies, but rather, um, rather take out the enemy's the enemy's HQ. Uh, something similar to the to bomb.
Hmm.
Though I wouldn't have it that you have to escort a bomb carrier or something like that. I'm not. This would be like a midway point between the way MOBAs work and the way big team battle works. Or if anyone remembers Battlefield 2172, Titan mode,
Hmm.
where the goal wasn't to wipe the enemy out, but to take out their Titan using a combination of cannons and getting on the thing to take it out.
Yeah.
Um, so for the purposes of this, we wouldn't be covering um, the elephant or the shadow. Um,
Yeah.
but as far as Covenant vehicles, uh, there's a few in that camp we can cover. The first is the Banshee,
Hmm.
which I'd say this is going to be tricky since the Banshee has verticality.
The Banshee has verticality, but that just means that it ignores terrain.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that could just be it. Or we can eschew the Banshee entirely if you'd like.
Nah,
Okay.
it's too much of a staple.
It is too much of a. I mean, I guess it's too much of a staple, but I don't know.
Yeah. As far as I do think it should have the most movement and but its hull and its armor are less. So I'm actually thinking it should have 10 inches of movement.
Hmm.
Uh, its hull I'm thinking 8.
Um. Yeah, I can see 8. It's pretty weak as far as it
Yeah.
goes.
As far as close quarters attack, um, I'm thinking +1 if only because it's going to have an easier time with ramming attacks.
Hmm.
Um, as far as shooting attack, mm, actually I think it should just have +1 in both because yeah, it does have shooting, but its shooting I wouldn't call it accurate, and it's only going to be shooting from the front. It's not going to be able to have any sort of option to swivel.
Yeah.
Uh, armor, I'm thinking that should be 2.
Yeah, it barely has any armor.
Um, so passive flight, movement ignores terrain. Uh, I'd say and I'd say another. I'd say directed fire. It can only fire what's directly in front of it.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that covers it for the Banshee. Let's see. Next one I have is the Chopper, which
So
was that wheelie vehicle that the
the brutes used.
mm-hmm. Uh, let's see. I would actually say that it is comparable to the Warthog, but cannot do shooting attack. But it's much better at ramming.
Um, well, it can only carry one person.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the Warthog in that respect. And I believe that they have front-facing guns.
Yep. So I would give them directed fire.
Mm-hmm. But the thing is that they have giant-ass bladed wheels. So
Yeah.
I think that their close quarters would be higher.
Yeah. Close quarters for the Warthog is 1. I'm thinking for the Chopper it should be 3.
Yeah.
And as far as shooting, I'd say same as the Banshee, just 1.
Yeah.
And let's see, passive directed fire works the exact same as it does for the Banshee. Armor, I think they can go with 4 for armor.
Yeah.
Movement 6, or should it be 8, the same as the Warthog?
It should be 8.
Let's see, hull. The Warthog has a hull of 10. Should it also have a hull of 10, or do you think it should be more?
No, I think it should be less. The chopper is very lightly armored. It is considered a light scout vehicle, unlike the Warthog, which does have some reconnaissance features, but it's an all-around troop vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking that this should have slightly more armor than the Banshee, but not by much, like a 5.
All right. What about hull?
I would give it the same hull as a Warthog though, at 10.
All right. So let's see. Next is the Ghost, which
I don't really have that written as Ghost Tank. It's not a tank.
I don't know why I wrote it that way either.
It is the lightest vehicle in all of the Covenant, and it's going to be very, very easy to kill if you can hit it.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I'd say, and it's referred to as a scout bike. So I'd say it would have have somewhat similar values to the Chopper.
So it's going to have it's faster than the Chopper for one.
Mm-hmm.
And for 2, it's not made of giant bladed wheels, so its CQ is going to be a 1, and its guns are going to be a 1, and it's going to have direct fire just like
Chopper.
Yes. But the Ghost is the fastest thing on the ground, period. Especially because it has that boost.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that it starts at 8, but that boost, if it chooses to use it,
Mm-hmm.
he's going to give it a full foot of movement, because it didn't double its movement, but it did make it just super fast.
Mm-hmm. What would you give it for hull?
See, this is where you can blow up a ghost with 2 plasma grenades. Or 1 frag grenade if you're really good. Ghosts were not very strong. I would say that we're at hull, right?
Yeah.
I would say their hull is probably a 6, and
And
their
armor?
armor is like a 2.
Alright.
Because Ghosts and Banshees had similar armor.
Let's see, I think they also should be I think they also should ignore terrain.
For the most part, they do.
And I'm thinking that instead they can move they for a boost. I'm thinking that they spend their action during the movement phase to give them +4 movement.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only phases I'm only thinking of having 3 phases in combat: setup, movement, and action.
Okay.
I don't think there'd be any need for any more than that.
Mm-hmm.
I know some games have melee and shooting actions as separate phases. I don't think that's apropos here. Uh, so let's see. Next next is the Revenant,
Mm-hmm.
which actually the Revenant is it's referred to as a swift tank, but there's scout versions.
The Revenant?
Yeah.
Let me.
It was introduced in Reach. It's regarded as a swift tank.
Yeah, hold on. It could have 2 people and had a plasma turret.
Mm-hmm.
Or a plasma mortar, right? Excuse me. I remember these things vaguely, but I don't remember a lot about them, to be honest.
I feel like this would be the Covenant's closest answer to the to a Gauss cannon Warthog.
Okay.
Because the turret can be moved, so it's not having the direct fire disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
So, uh, hull 10, movement 8, CQA 1, shooting attack 3, armor 5, having the hover passive.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all that'd be needed for the Revenant.
Yeah, I think that's probably all we need.
Um, let's see. Next is we're skipping the Shadow, so next is the Spectre.
Okay.
Not to be confused with the James Bond villains.
Yeah. These are the actual tanks.
Yeah. The Spectre and
So,
the Wraith are the two closest things to tanks. Let's see. Spectre was introduced in Halo 2.
I mean, they consider the Spectre's Warthog to be Spectre's counterpart to be the Warthog, though.
Except the Spectre doesn't have a has is one man and a turret that isn't and a back end that isn't manned.
One driver, one gunner, two passengers. Well, although I think the two passengers were the two little rings on the side. The gunner could be manned. I remember that.
Yeah, my bad. Although given I feel like we should we drop the Revenant and keep the Spectre then? Because they're kind of overlapping on each other.
Yeah, I think so. Looking at the wiki, it even says that the Revenant is technically a counterpart to the Spectre.
Mm-hmm. So, I'd say we can pretty much keep the same stats. Just drop the Spectre from my list.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the Wraith.
The Wraith
And I think the Wraith is one
is
that
the actual tank. It's the tank.
Mm-hmm. So oops.
Mm-hmm.
So given that should it have a similar stat block as the Scorpion?
No, the Wraith definitely had less hull, but the same amount of armor. It was faster though.
Mm-hmm. So let's see, the Scorpion has a hull of 20.
Mm-hmm.
So 15 maybe?
Yeah.
As far as movement, let's see, the Scorpion's movement is hang on. 6.
Yeah, and so the Wraith should have 8. The Wraith was very fast. I remember that. But it only had one weapon, as far as I'm aware, which was the plasma mortar.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, close quarters attack. I'd say it should have +2 because it's a big boy, and ramming it and getting hit with a ramming attack from it is gonna run your ass over.
Yep. Especially since it's faster than the Scorpion, so it should absolutely have that bash.
Mm-hmm. As far as shooting attack,
it's a mortar, so it doesn't follow direct line of sight.
So what, +0?
Yeah.
All right. Armor.
It will have the same armor.
Has 10 armor.
Yeah, it will have the same. Like I said, they have the same armor. It's just that the Wraith definitely had less hull. It could soak the same amount of punishment, but when it took punishment, it took more of it easily. or no, it when it took punishment, it had less to take before it blew up.
Let's see. Passive. Its active is going to be the plasma mortar.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, which let me see what I wrote for the smoothbore cannon.
Well, the smoothbore cannon is basically a hit scan.
Yeah, I think for this it is going to hit targets within a 5-inch radius
Of wherever the mortar round lands. Yeah. Did you know I saw people blow themselves up with the plasma mortar on accident, Monk?
Yes.
Because you can aim that mortar pretty far down while you're in the wraith,
Mm-hmm.
and hit the ground in front of you. I watched people accidentally blow themselves up, and it was fucking great.
Yeah. So, and this is the reason why we're seeing here why I made the decision to utilize a skirmish style approach with a rule of 12.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise we end up with problems when it comes to scale, and more importantly when it comes to variety.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as how I'd handle the loadouts for individual units, I would say all of the UNSC units get two weapon slots
Mm-hmm.
and one equipment slot. Equipment can just as well be a grenade or be a bubble shield.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a reason to add a third slot. I don't like the idea of a fourth pillar, and this also allows things like some of the armor abilities to be equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you want to go full armor lock, this is how you do it. um, I am thinking that each type of equipment has a certain number of slots. Not slots isn't the best word. Charges.
Okay.
Like I'm thinking maybe four for grenades, and for some of the equipment stuff it's less.
Okay.
Um, you can swap it with stuff that you find. I am keeping that, and because of that, if I was to make this a proper thing, I would encourage cards be used for equipment and weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the exception to the rule is that um, Covenant only get Covenant only, with the exception of brutes and elites, only get one slot.
Only get one weapon.
They get one slot and one slot for equipment.
Mm.
Um,
One weapon choice, one equipment choice. Got it.
Yeah. Vehicles would have their own preset weapons.
Mm-hmm. As we've discussed.
And any vehicle weapon would be in the category of super heavy.
Yep.
As far as the damage range, I do think that I do think we should go with that whole scale of that rule of 10 that we've been going with so far.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to things that would do 10 damage, I'm thinking, say, rocket launchers and energy swords. Maybe the I'd say the Spartan laser would also do a 10.
Okay.
But the low end would be things like pistols. As much as
I don't know. I'm gonna say I don't know about that, Monk.
Uh,
Magnum is a better sniper rifle than the sniper rifle in the first game.
so one of the rules that I have is, um, if you roll a natural 10, that's an auto hit.
Mm.
Uh, and I'd say it's an auto hit, and that's the one time where excess is 1-to-1 instead of half.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to go with the implication that a natural 10 is the equivalent of a headshot.
I thought that was gonna be matching tens.
Oh yeah, matching 10s. My bad. I'd say I'd say if you get a matching 10, that is an auto hit that ignores armor.
Headshot.
And getting an you know what the odds are of getting double 10s on a 2d10 are?
I mean, very low. That's a tenth of a tenth. It's 1%.
Yeah. The most common die result you're going to get out of a 2d10 roll is 11.
Yep. In any combination of 1 and 0, 4 and 7, 5 and 6, etc.
Mm-hmm. Um, one of the things I'd probably have to I'd, should there be a universal stunt table, or do you think you think match effects should be weapon specific?
Um, Weapons in Halo act a lot differently from each other in many different ways.
So you think
So,
they should have their own group of match effects?
yes. Like, you cannot sit there and tell me that the shotgun has the same exact effects as the spiker, or the DMR has the same exact effects as a plasma rifle, or the plasma pistol has the same effect as the Magnum. They're way too different.
I will note that you remember that there was one particular type of format in Halo 4 that I wasn't a fan of. That
Um,
being ordnance,
yes.
the ordnance system that was in it. Personal ordnance, yeah, that I didn't have a problem with that. That's basically just score streaks. That'd be something that's easy to implement. World ordnance, I'd say is a add-on rule that you could put in where at the end of every round a random weapon will drop.
Yeah, that'd be hard to implement though. You'd have to have your own randomizer splash tables and shit.
Um, one thing I am considering when it comes to the HQ variant is you're able to swap out weapons and restock your stuff by heading back to the HQ.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you head back to your HQ, you should be able to swap your loadout.
And at the end of turn, you can replenish units.
Yeah.
Because the idea is you're dealing with potentially infinite armies to try and keep the HQs safe.
Mm.
So and this is the reason why I said it's a midway point between big team battle and a MOBA, because it's all about trying to push into the enemy in that kind of situation.
You took out 2 of my Marines. Okay, this next turn I'm gonna just throw a Scorpion in your path.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck? He's got a tank! Yep.
Yep.
But that's okay. I have a motherfucking anti-tank rifle. Holy shit, I've got a motherfucking anti-tank rifle!
Mm-hmm.
At least it's not the Harkonnen Mark II.
No. Though don't tempt me.
There are AA variants of the Revenant monk that instead of using plasma mortars use fuel rod cannons.
Hmm.
But I
But I think we've exhausted as far as we're going to go with this. I know we didn't cover weapons, but that may be something we cover at at a future date.
Mhm.
But
it's it's been a wonderful thought experiment thus far.
hmm uh, so with that said, that's going to do it for us tonight. I'm going to be doing an interview late in the morning, covering. I'm going to be talking with Bad Badger Games on their campaign setting they're working on. So that should be an interesting endeavor to go into. And of course, I'm still going to have plenty of fun on the interview end for the rest of the week, as well as of course the continuation of Cloister of the Dice on Saturday. They're reaching closer and closer to the end point of the Skies of Axia campaign. On Wednesday, Mark McKinnon's going to be coming back because he's putting out some expansions to Absolute Power, the reincarnation of Silver Age Sentinels. So it'll be fun to have him back in the temple. Earlier today, I had Ed Jowett back in. He's always fun to have on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I did pitch to him about FF Legend. I'm going to be looking through contacts to see if I can get anybody to interview us again. Uh, I do have one. I have sent the draft to a few people to look over, but I'm playing long range game with that kind of thing, especially since worst case scenario, I may have to set up an Indiegogo or something like, or God help me, a Patreon to get art.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's a story for another day. So until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk, and join the watch.